The unfortunate thing is that there are times in our lives where we have to have hard conversations about death. Stick around. We're going to talk to Isabel about this topic, and she is going to give us some communication tips on how to handle it. So, Isabel, thank you so much for coming today. We've had several conversations, and I love what you do because I've been there. So a couple of years ago, my mom passed, and leading up to and all around that, there were conversations that were hard, but we had to have them. And so I'm just grateful that you're here. And I would love for you to go ahead and start by introducing yourself to our audience. Let them know who you are and what you do.
Thank you so much, Traci, for having me here today. I love your work. I love how you put love in everything you do. So I'm very honored to be here with you. And well, my name is Isabel Melgarejo. Um, I help families navigate the caregiving time in their lives. So when we transition from being healthy to receiving bad news at a doctor's office and then trying to figure out life from there. So I help families with that transition and I help them plan, make decisions, and ideally, I like working with people before they have to make those decisions.
Mm. Okay. Okay. All right. So my guess is, and based on our past conversations, I know this answer, but just for our audience, because they don't know, or more than likely they don't know, tell us your story before we get into the communication tips. Tell us your story of what got you to what you're doing.
So, when I was 20, I became a caregiver out of the blue. My dad passed away suddenly, and at the time, my mom was dealing with cancer and she got really depressed. So, I was the youngest, still living with my parents. My siblings were gone doing their thing. And it was just assumed that I was going to be responsible for the care. And that's what happened. I was responsible for her doctor's appointments, making sure that she was getting to them, making sure that there was food in the fridge because she never liked cooking and she was depressed. There was no need to eat
Mm,
for whatever reason. And in this process, I had to learn to have very difficult conversations. I had to figure out how I was going to finish paying for college. I had to figure out even legal stuff. Um, what was happening with the will and were all these assets transferred. Um, so I was responsible for a lot of things that most people my age wouldn't even consider.
right.
And a few years ago, when I moved here to Texas, I started noticing red flags. And I started noticing that my mom was heavily reliant on me. And those red flags, um, I think I mentioned to you that one day she fell and broke her nose. So that was a moment it hit me that I didn't want to be responsible for the whole thing.
Mm,
I'm more than happy to help support, be there for her, but I didn't want to put my life on hold and be responsible for absolutely everything. I didn't want to feel that I had no resources, that I
mm.
had no options. So that's how I started.
Right. Wow. And really, honestly, at any age, that's a lot. But
Yes.
now put it on a 20-year-old who's left high school thinking, I've got, you're focused on your future. I've got the rest of my life to figure out. And you're just thinking like a 20-year-old, right? And then your dad passes and your mom has cancer, and you have to add all of this stuff in, and it is a lot, like I said, for anybody at any age. So I can only imagine, knowing what I was going through, sharing it with siblings, with and my dad, with my mom passing. But my guess is you felt at times, especially, very, very alone. So
Yes.
yeah. So talk to us about, let our audience know really how that morphed you into doing what you do today, and what you do today to support other people.
So there were several things. First of all, is when you're in those situations, you sort of forget about yourself. You
Mm,
are in, okay, what is what are the things that I need to do for my loved one? So you're thinking about the type of care, the type of support, the type of everything. And you completely forget about yourself. You completely forget about the things that you like, that you enjoy. So while all of my friends were partying, clubbing, having fun, as any other 20-year-old, um, I was home being a responsible adult.
right. Yeah.
And that can be very frustrating, and especially when the carries over, transitioning from that support to finding yourself. That is a very lonely journey, because nobody else can help you find yourself. You have to find yourself within you. And being with oneself and trying to figure out what you like, what you want to do, what what inspires you, what motivates you. It is a very lonely journey. So that is one thing that, if you manage for a period of time, you don't have to go all the way in to try to figure out all of you. You can start working with yourself, and okay, these are the things that I like, that I enjoy, and I will keep doing them. So that part of yourself is protected from everything that's happening. Another thing that I learned during this process is that we are too afraid of talking about the difficult things. We are too afraid about talking about death and dying.
Mm,
um, we're too afraid of saying what we want. And to be honest, that is not an act of love. For me, and you talked with me about how we express love and the love languages.
mm-hmm.
Um, and not telling people what we want is not love, because we leave all that responsibility to somebody else.
Mm,
So if we share that with the people that we love, we are sharing who we are and what we want. So it is a beautiful act of love, of saying, like, hey, I know this is hard. I know that probably we don't want, neither you or I want to be talking about this at this moment. But these are the things that I would like when I grow older.
mm.
This is how I would like to be buried. This is how I would like to be honored in life and after I am gone.
Wow.
Because I know that you love me so much that you're going to honor my wishes.
Mm, mm-hmm.
And how many times we just do things because we think our loved one would enjoy those things, but do they really?
Mm. Right.
So that was the second big lesson that I learned, that even though we are raised to never speak about those things, we need to.
Right.
And the third thing is that once you start receiving these news, it is just one thing after another. And you don't want to be put in a situation in which you have to make a decision on top of all your feelings. Because that's the worst time to making any decision.
Right.
If you're hyper, super happy, super enjoyable, you're gonna go shopping and buy more of whatever you need. On the other side, if you're depressed, if you're sad, the same is gonna happen. You're gonna go and shop more of what you need. Um, so you shouldn't be making decisions when you are in your highs or lows. You should be making decisions when you are being curious, when you're in a neutral mood,
Right. Yeah.
that you like, hey, what would happen? Because that allows you to have a variety of options. If you're being curious, you're not just going to stick with what you think. You can do research and, okay, what are other options that I can have? And I hear people talking when they move to senior care, independent care, and they move into these communities, how happy they are because they move there and they have a community of people about the same age as they are, who are traveling the world, who are enjoying life, who are who have activities all day long, and they have that. And and this happens often. Like, I talk with people all the time and they say like the same thing. They're so
Mhm.
happy that they made that decision and they wish they had done that decision earlier. But that doesn't happen if you're not curious and you're not researching and looking what other options are out there for you. So those are my three biggest insights.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, and you brought up some great points about the headspace that you're in when you're high and the headspace that you're in when you're low, for sure. Okay, so now let's talk about, and you actually already kind of did give us some tips on communicating when you were sharing that, but what tips would you have in terms of communication when it comes to, okay, I'm about to have a conversation with somebody and I don't want to have it, but it's necessary? What tips would you have to help people communicate when they're about to have conversations that really they might rather avoid?
I think first of all is to understand that you're having a conversation, you're not imposing.
Okay.
What happens, and I see it with all of my friends and all the people that I talk with, we think that we know best than our parents. And we want them to do what we think is best for them. So you shouldn't be driving anymore. You shouldn't be
Mm,
going up and down stairs anymore. You should, whatever,
mm-hmm.
fill in the blank.
Right.
So that is a difficult conversation that you need to have. Or it can go around finances, it can go around legal stuff. It can go all the way through the spectrum.
Right.
So, first, we need to understand that they have a voice and that they are allowed to have their own opinions about things.
Yeah.
that is like the first thing that we need to acknowledge. We are not dealing with a 5-year-old kid that we can say, like, don't put your hand on the stove or you're going to get burned.
Right.
We are talking with an adult who has made decisions all of their lives, and that they, many times, they are aware of what's happening and they are afraid.
Mm. Wow. Yes. Yes.
They don't like losing control over their bodies, they don't like losing their freedom, and they see the ability to drive or walk or go places, it means freedom for them.
Right.
So if we take that from them, we're removing that freedom.
Mm.
I was talking with a client this morning, and she was like, well, this person, uh, like he's in denial, and he mentioned to her that he didn't want to get his disability card because then he would have to accept that he's no longer able to walk long distances, that he's not
Wow.
able to move from one place to another.
Wow.
So it is painful for our loved ones to be there.
Ah, right. Right. Yeah.
And if on top of that you're putting pressure, you're not going to get anything out of that conversation.
Yeah.
So you need to come to these conversations with a very creative mind. You
Okay.
need to understand what is the problem, and you need to have 5 different options. And ideally, you want to start with 20 and just propose those top 3 that would work.
Mm.
So, what are all these other options? And I'm putting a very high number because otherwise you're like, okay, I got my 3. No, I want you to actually do the homework, be
Wow.
creative, and find solutions.
Mm.
And if you're having this conversation with your loved one and you're saying, hey, I'm worried that this could happen, how can we troubleshoot this? How can we find solutions to this?
Wow.
And then you're creative. Both of you can be creative.
Mm-hmm.
If you're accepting that, and if you're just, hey, why don't you do this? If you want your parent to come and live with you because they shouldn't be living by themselves anymore,
Right.
probably. Maybe you want to start by inviting them for a month.
Okay. Right. That makes sense.
Maybe you want to start the conversation by, how would it look like if you come and visit more often? Or you can go and live with all these different people. Or we can go and research these communities. And you can start planning different things that feel differently and see what they think.
Right.
Instead of just imposing what you want.
Right. Right. Yes. Yes.
And another thing that I think it's very important for us, and even just thinking about these things make conversations way easier because we don't know that we're not going to be the executioner, like, you have to do this.
Right.
And another thing that I think it's very important for us to consider is how we feel about it. If we're feeling very anxious about that conversation,
Mm.
not. Your anxiety is going to translate in whatever you say.
Yes, that makes sense.
If you're angry about it, like, I'm pretty sure we all of us here listening, we've all had a conversation when we were angry. Did that go well?
Right. And
No.
it usually doesn't. It usually does not.
No, it never ends well because if you're angry, you're just fighting, either fighting or protecting yourself. So you have to make sure that your state of mind is in the right place. You need to make sure that you're not super happy, super excited, angry, anxious, sad, any of those feelings. If you're fearful, that's what you're going to present to the other person.
Right.
I'm afraid of this conversation. So if you're afraid of whatever you have to say, why would I have to listen to you?
And then I'm going to match your fearfulness. If you're coming at me and I can tell you're anxious or fearful, then I'm going to start mirroring that. And now maybe I'm going to start feeling anxious or fearful. And I now maybe we have two people who are anxious and fearful. And then navigating that conversation is going to take on a whole different picture.
Exactly. Yeah. So you have to pay attention on how you're feeling and how you present yourself into that conversation. And not only how you started, but you have to monitor how you feel throughout that conversation.
Right.
And it is okay to stop that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It is okay to walk away. You're not a failure because you walk away. Actually, you were very brave in recognizing that you were angry, that you were anxious, that you were upset, that you had to walk away. That requires so much strength that if you can do it, you can call that person the next day and continue that conversation.
Right. And I imagine that because it is a difficult conversation, period, the end, we do have emotions, we do have feelings, and those are natural. It's just maybe deciding when might be the most opportune time to have those. I'm laughing because I have a dog that normally sits there right over there and barks, but for whatever reason, he is choosing to not sit there and bark today. So there are no worries. But go back to what I was saying. We have emotions and feelings that are natural, and we're not saying. And I imagine, Isabel, you're not saying that feeling is wrong or bad. That's not what you're saying at all. It's that we do have those feelings, but sometimes when they're strong, that may not lend itself to that conversation in that moment. And if I'm talking to somebody about conflict management, let's say, and the conversation starts taking a negative turn, I will say just walk away for a little bit. Walk away, take a breath, and decide when you're able or when that other person is able to continue that conversation. And so it sounds like you're kind of giving that same advice that if the emotions get too high and it's hard for you to be in that neutral place, then maybe you consider having that conversation to be continued, right? Let's do it. Let's start this again in a day, later this afternoon, whatever that looks like.
And how many times families, and I'm pretty sure you've come through these situations in which families, they are very close and they are wonderful families. Someone passes away and then they all fight.
Yes. Yes.
That's not because they don't love each other.
Mm-hmm.
That happens because those conversations were just high emotion all the time. And
Yeah.
if you're putting those high emotions of everybody grieving a loved one, And on
Mm.
top of that, making difficult decisions. It's just a recipe for disaster.
It is hard. It is absolutely hard. And having gone through that time period with my family, there are three siblings, and my dad very much wanted to lean on us three kids and help him make decisions. So you really had four adults trying to make decisions, all with the emotions of my mom slash my wife is about to die. My mom slash my wife just died. And so it was very hard navigating those conversations leading up to and preceding her death. And yes, it's hard. It's very hard. And luckily, there are different personality types, and luckily we were able to navigate most of those. Now, has there been some fighting after the fact? Yes, right? But not near to the extent that I have seen in some families. Some families I've witnessed fall apart and relationships are severed, like multiple relationships are severed for the remaining period of time. And so grieving is hard enough. Having conversations leading up to someone, and maybe it's not even death that you're having a conversation about. Maybe it's somebody has dementia, right? Now, how do we navigate that? Because we know that dementia, that death could take years. It might be fast, but it could take years. And so we're not necessarily having conversations about an immediate or impending death. It might be, this could be 10 years that we are trying to navigate and have these conversations. And so it is hard. It is just hard. And we're all coming into it with different thoughts, different feelings, different beliefs, different values. So it's very hard. So, what advice would you give? Let's say, and we kind of talked about it. So, I guess my question is, do you have a second piece of advice? So, let's say a family is coming, maybe it's two people, three people, four people, whatever. And they're coming together for a difficult conversation, whatever it is. And things turn south. And now we've talked about, okay, let's take a breath, let's take a break. How do you recommend a conversation? How do you recommend that people temporarily end that conversation? What verbiage could you use, or what tips could you give on how do we say, okay, wait, let's take a time out and let's reconvene, but maybe decide when to reconvene that conversation? Do you have any language to use, any ideas that you could give our listeners if this happens?
Given that when you're in that position and your energy is high, whatever you can say is good.
Okay.
Because if you try to, it's really hard to think when you are upset.
It is.
Like when the energy is really really high, even if you're super happy, if you were to win the lottery today and you're super excited and happy, you can't think about other things. That's all your thought. So it's just, if you're in that position, it's just the best you can do is say, I think this is, we're not getting anywhere. Let's stop this conversation and come back on another time.
Mm,
And what I usually recommend people is thinking, because you're going to start ruminating about that conversation eventually.
right.
Like, right as you stop that conversation, you're going to start ruminating. So right there, I would like people to think, why that other person thinks that way. Where
Okay.
are they coming from?
Mm,
Because we make conversations personal. So if someone said whatever, we made it personal. We don't stop to consider, are they trying to attack me, or are they trying to convey another message that I'm not understanding for whatever reason? Even if they said, you blah, and we make it personal, yes, they might have said things that hurt us, but when you start putting yourself in that position in which you actually think about the other person and their own perspectives and where they're coming from, it will be easier to understand. Because most of the times, other people think that they are right and you're wrong. And both of you have a reason. And for the most part, people don't want the worst for the other person.
right.
It's not like I'm wishing you bad things. No, they just have different perspectives. So once you start through that ruminating process, just think, write, talk with your phone about it. I don't know. Whatever method people like using to put their feelings out there. Why? Why why is this important? Why are they coming to this conclusion?
Mm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And do you find asking questions, asking those direct questions, but not in a hostile way? Do you think asking questions could help in this situation?
Yes, definitely. If you're being curious, okay, I want to understand where you're coming from. You mentioned these. Why do you think this is a good idea?
Right, right. Yes. I think that being curious, coming at something with curiosity is going to serve you better than coming into it with an assumption that might be false. And if it's false, that's going to damage and further make that conversation harder than if you're coming at it with curiosity. I think, why are you saying that? Like you said, why are you saying that? Why do you think that this is the best option? Those kinds of things, for sure. That's good that you said that. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you have two different people, and one says that your loved one with dementia should go live with you, or I'm gonna bring mom to live with me full time, and someone else is saying no, she should go to memory care. Okay, why? Why do you think it's going to be best if you take care of her? Well, I
Mm,
know myself. I know I'm going to be there. Um, I know that I'll be there for her all the time, and there's nobody better than me to take care of mom.
mm,
Yes, but if we put her in memory care, she will have uh, someone 24/7, specialized care. Um, so it's usually those conversations you want to understand what people are thinking,
mm,
because many times we don't think, or we haven't considered what other people already have. So if I were to propose that, like, hey, you're going to burn out if it's just you taking, oh no, because you are going to come and help me out. Who said I would come?
right. Right. Right.
So yeah, that's why it is important to just, like, hey, what are your thoughts about this? And I think we don't give the word why, the reasons why, we don't give them as much power as they have, and we should.
Mm.
We don't ask that question enough. I think we were five, we made all the why questions that we needed to do, and we forgot about that question forever again.
I like that. I like that. Okay. All right. So before we close out, do you have any other things to share with the audience?
I'm actually very excited because I will start a program with people. So if they want to join, I'll be thrilled to have them.
Okay. Okay.
It's going to be a planning lab. I don't even have a name for it, but but it will be coming in a couple of months, and I'm pretty sure that by the time this airs,
It
it's
will be
going to be
out.
ready. So if people want to come and join us, I'll be thrilled to have them and helping them have those conversations and the
Yes.
whole thing.
Yes. Okay. So we will put your information and then they can contact you if they want to learn more about this planning lab. But other than the planning lab, what are other ways that you could support members of the audience?
Um, if you go to my website, there's a free guide on how to have difficult conversations. So go ahead and grab that guide.
Yes.
It walks you step by step on what you should do. It is a very comprehensive guide. So go ahead and grab that guide. Um, the other thing is start dealing with little things. You don't start by running a marathon. You start by running a 5K, and sometimes you start by walking.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would start by walking the 5K for sure.
Or just getting outside and walking around the block. So,
Yeah.
uh, if you want to have the biggest of conversations and you don't have practice, that's going to be hard. But if you have smaller conversations that you can put in there and you can get practice on, and probably conversations that have not a huge significance in life, um, you might want to start with those conversations and start building that communication muscle.
Yes. I like that. That's great advice. So, what is your website?
It is Tumcoeur, TUMCOEUR.com. And you can go there and check whatever. It's there.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Okay. Isabel, thank you so much for coming on. And I know that this is a valuable topic. It's not a fun one, not a pretty one, but it's a necessary one. So, thank you for what you do to help families, to help individuals as they navigate what is inevitable.
Of
So,
course.
thank you so much for coming on, and everybody, we will see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.